Admiral Kim Hannah stared at the glowing holographic message floating in front of her desk. The alien symbols translated into words that made her blood run cold, yet her face remained perfectly calm. Around her, the command center of Luna Station buzzed with nervous energy as officers whispered among themselves. The message was simple and brutal. The Galactic Council wanted one human representative to travel to their massive space station. This person would stand trial for humanity's crime of expanding into space without permission. They had exactly 72 hours to comply, or the Council would send their war fleets to destroy every human colony in the galaxy. Commander Park Ji-ho looked up from his control panel, his young face pale with worry. "Admiral, they want us to send someone they can kill on camera. Make an example of us to scare other species." Hannah nodded slowly. She had been expecting this day for years. The Galactic Council ruled over dozens of alien species with fear and violence. The Vorthok Empire loved war and conquest. The Mindari Collective could read minds and control thoughts. Together, they had crushed every species that dared to challenge them. But humans were different. While other species built bigger guns and faster ships, humanity had spent 15 years doing something else entirely, something the Council had never seen coming. "Admiral, we could send Ambassador Lee Suho," suggested another officer. "He knows their languages and customs." "Or we could," refused Ji-ho added angrily. "Make them come to us. Show them we won't be intimidated." Hannah smiled for the first time since reading the message. Both suggestions would lead to the same result: human extinction. The Council expected either a frightened diplomat begging for mercy or a proud warrior they could execute dramatically. They had prepared for both scenarios. They had not prepared for what Hannah was about to do. "Prepare my personal transport ship," she ordered, standing up from her chair. The entire command center fell silent. Officers stared at her in shock. Commander Ji-ho stood up so quickly his chair fell over. "Admiral, you can't be serious. That's a death sentence. They'll torture you for information and then kill you slowly to make a point." Hannah walked over to her desk and picked up a simple metal briefcase. It looked ordinary, the kind business people carried to meetings. She also knelt down to pet the large German Shepherd dog lying next to her chair. "Taiyang needs some exercise anyway," she said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "And I have some important documents to review during the trip." The dog's tail wagged once. In the dim light of the command center, his cybernetic eye implants glowed with a soft blue light. Most people thought Taiyang was just Admiral Hannah's pet. They were wrong about many things. "Admiral, this is suicide," Ji-ho pleaded. "Let me go instead. Or send a team. Don't sacrifice yourself for nothing." Hannah looked around the room at the faces of her officers. These men and women had served under her for years. They had seen her win battles against impossible odds. They trusted her completely, which made what she was about to do even harder. "Listen carefully," she said in a voice that commanded absolute attention. "The Council thinks they understand humans. They believe we're like them, that we solve problems with violence and threats. They're about to learn how wrong they are." She held up the briefcase. "They want an unarmed ambassador. Technically, I qualify. This contains legal documents and personal items. Nothing they would classify as a weapon." Ji-ho frowned. "What aren't you telling us, Admiral?" For 15 years, Admiral Kim Hannah had been building something in secret. While the Council focused on military strength, she had created the most sophisticated spy network in galactic history. Human agents had infiltrated every major alien government. They had recorded conversations, copied files, and gathered evidence of crimes that would shock the galaxy. But she couldn't tell her officers the truth. Not yet. If the Mindari telepaths sensed any deception in her crew's minds, the entire plan would fail. "I'm telling you to trust me," she said simply, "and to be ready for anything in the next few days." She walked toward the exit, Taiyang padding. silently beside her. The briefcase felt heavier than usual, but not because of its weight. Inside were quantum computers, communication devices, and enough evidence to bring down the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The Council wanted to put humanity on trial. They had no idea that Hannah was about to put them on trial instead, while they prepared their execution chamber. She was preparing to destroy their entire civilization, not with bombs or bullets, but with something far more dangerous, the truth. As the command center doors closed behind her, Admiral Kim Hannah allowed herself one small smile. The Galactic Council thought they were about to crush humanity's spirit by executing their representative. Instead, they had just invited their own destruction aboard their most secure station, and the best part was, they would never see it coming, until it was far too late. The dog beside her seemed to sense her mood, his mechanical eyes glowing brighter in anticipation of the hunt to come. Admiral Kim Hannah's small transport ship drifted toward the massive space station like a tiny insect, approaching a metal moon. The Nexus station stretched 4 kilometers in every direction, its countless levels spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Millions of lights twinkled across its surface, each one representing the home of some alien species that bowed to the Galactic Council's rule. Hannah stood at the pilot's window, watching the station grow larger. Beside her, Taiyang sat perfectly still, his cybernetic eyes recording everything they saw. The dog appeared calm, but Hannah knew his enhanced brain was analyzing defensive positions, guard rotations, and structural weaknesses. Incoming human vessel, prepare for docking, crackled a harsh voice through the communication system. The translator made it sound mechanical, but Hannah could hear the mockery underneath. They were laughing at her already. 2 massive Vorthok warships flanked her tiny transport as it approached the docking bay. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. The message was clear: any attempt to escape would end in instant death. The docking process was deliberately rough. Vorthok controllers slammed her ship into the dock with enough force to rattle her teeth. Another small humiliation, designed to show her how powerless she was. When the airlock opened, 6 Vorthok guards waited for her. Each one stood over 2 meters tall, their insect-like bodies covered in natural armor plating. Their 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, while their mandibles clicked together as they spoke in their native language. "The human comes willingly to die," chittered the lead guard. "How pathetic these creatures are." "She thinks she can talk her way out of execution," laughed another. "Weak species always believe words can stop plasma cannons." Hannah stepped off, her ship carrying only her briefcase. Taiyang walked beside her, his leash loose in her other hand. To the guards, she looked exactly like what they expected, a frightened old woman bringing her pet for comfort in her final hours. They had no idea that both the woman and the dog were weapons of mass destruction. The corridors of Nexus Station stretched endlessly in all directions. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species hurried through the passages, all of them careful to avoid eye contact with the Vorthok guards. Fear ruled this place. Fear of saying the wrong thing, thinking the wrong thought, or simply being in the wrong place when the council needed someone to blame. Hannah observed everything as they walked. Security cameras, guard positions, communication arrays, power conduits. Her enhanced memory recorded every detail for later analysis. 15 years of intelligence training had taught her to see patterns that others missed. The Grand Judgment Chamber was designed to intimidate. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, while massive pillars supported viewing galleries filled with alien spectators. At the center sat 12 raised platforms, each one occupied by a representative of the Council's ruling species. Chancellor Vexstar dominated the center position. His 6 arms moved constantly as he gestured, each limb covered in ceremonial armor that displayed his countless military victories. His mandibles dripped with acidic saliva that hissed when it hit the floor. To his left floated Speaker, Janali, of the Mindari Collective. The creature had no solid form, instead appearing as a translucent jellyfish-like being that pulsed with changing colors. Telepathic tentacles drifted around its body, like living thoughts made visible. The other council members represented the galaxy's most powerful and ruthless species. Warriors, conquerors, and tyrants who had crushed every challenge to their rule for thousands of years. "Approach the judgment platform," commanded Vextar, his voice amplified to echo through the massive chamber. "State your name and surrender your weapons." Hannah walked calmly across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Taiyang padded beside her, drawing curious looks from the alien spectators. Many had never seen a dog before, and they whispered among themselves about the strange creature the human had brought. "Admiral Kim Hannah, Seoul Defense Force," she announced clearly. Without hesitation, she removed her sidearm and placed it on the designated platform. The weapon looked primitive compared to the advanced energy guns carried by the guards. "I carry no other weapons," she continued, gesturing to her briefcase and dog. "Only legal documents and personal effects necessary for these proceedings." Speaker Janali's tentacles writhed with interest. The Mindari were the most powerful telepaths in the galaxy, capable of reading thoughts from across star systems. The creature's probing touch invaded Hannah's mind, searching for lies or hidden weapons. The mental scan found exactly what Hannah wanted it to find. No deception about weapons. No hidden military plans. No fear of death. Just calm determination and a genuine belief that she could present evidence in her defense. The speaker's colors shifted to satisfied blue-green. The human speaks truth about weapons. Her mind contains no military secrets. The council members exchanged pleased looks. This was going exactly as planned. They had expected the humans to send either a cowering diplomat or a defiant warrior. Instead, they had sent a deluded old woman who actually believed she could defend her species with paperwork. "You stand accused of illegal territorial expansion and aggressive colonization," Vextar announced formally. "Your species has violated 17 sections of galactic law. How do you plead to these charges?" The chamber fell silent. Every eye focused on the small human standing alone before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. This was the moment. They had all been waiting for the confession that would justify humanity's destruction. Instead, Admiral Kim Hannah smiled. "I request permission to present evidence before entering a plea," she said calmly. "Context is everything in legal matters, as I'm sure you'll agree." The chamber erupted in laughter. Aliens chittered, roared, and sang with amusement. The human actually thought she could defend the indefensible. This promised to be the most entertaining execution in council history. Chancellor Vextar's mandibles spread wide in what passed for a grin among his species. "Very well, Admiral. Show us your evidence. We could all use some amusement before the sentence is carried out." Hannah placed her briefcase on the floor and began to open it. "Thank you, Chancellor. I think you'll find this very educational." Admiral Kim Hannah knelt beside her briefcase and pressed a small button on its surface. What looked like an ordinary business case suddenly came alive with lights and soft humming sounds. A holographic projector rose from the center, casting a three-dimensional star map that filled the entire chamber with glowing points of light. The alien spectators leaned forward in their seats, curious despite themselves. Even the council members seemed interested in what the human would try to show them. They expected desperate lies or pathetic pleading. They were about to get something very different. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Hannah began, in a calm, professional voice. "Let me show you the real story of human expansion into your territories." The star map zoomed in on specific solar systems, each one marked with different colored lights. Red dots showed Vorthok territory, blue represented Mindari space, and yellow indicated areas controlled by other council species. Each human colony was established for one reason, Hannah continued, pointing to the nearest red dot. "We receive distress signals from these worlds, calls for help that your governments ignored or actively suppressed." The hologram shifted, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images that made several aliens gasp in horror. Mining operations on barren planets where thousands of creatures worked in chains. The workers were clearly not Vorthok. They were smaller, weaker species that had been conquered and enslaved. "The Kepler 442 system," Hannah announced. "Vorthok mining operation, extracting rare metals using slave labor from the Zephyrian species. Death rate, 40% annually. Total population enslaved, 2.3 million beings." Chancellor Vexstar S6 Arms trembled with rage. His mandibles clicked rapidly as acidic drool hissed on the floor. "These images are false. Computer-generated lies designed to slander the Vorthok Empire. Are they?" Hannah asked mildly. She pressed another button, and the hologram changed again. This time it showed Speaker Janali, floating in what appeared to be a laboratory. Dozens of alien beings lay unconscious on tables while Mindari technicians worked on their brains. "Mental conditioning facility on Proxima Station," Hannah narrated. "The Mindari Collective's program to reprogram inferior species for better compliance." Note the date stamp. This footage was recorded 6 months ago. Speaker Janali's translucent form flickered with angry red patterns. "Impossible. Our facilities are completely secure. No outsider could penetrate our defenses." The hologram cycled through image after image. Secret weapons testing on populated worlds. Forced sterilization programs designed to eliminate unwanted species. Resource extraction operations that poisoned entire ecosystems. Each piece of evidence was more damning than the last. In the viewing galleries, representatives from smaller species began talking excitedly among themselves. Many recognized their own people in the footage. Worlds they thought had been destroyed by natural disasters were revealed to have been deliberately poisoned. Family members who had disappeared were shown working in hidden labor camps. "We have documentation spanning 15 years, Hannah continued, cycling through files with practiced efficiency. Tax records showing payments for slave operations. Military orders for population reduction. Communications between council members discussing which species to eliminate next." The next hologram showed a meeting between all 12 council members in a private chamber. Their voices were crystal clear as they discussed plans to wipe out an entire species whose homeworld contained valuable minerals. "The Altarians have served their purpose," Chancellor Vexstar's recorded voice echoed through the chamber. "Their mining techniques are outdated. Eliminate the population and replace them with more efficient workers." "Agreed," came Speaker Janali's melodic voice. "We can make it appear to be a plague. The other species will never suspect." The real Chancellor Vexta rose to his full height. All 6 arms spread wide in fury. "Lies. All lies. These recordings are fabricated by human technology." "Then explain this," Hannah said calmly. The hologram switched to show financial records, shipping manifests, and military deployment orders. Every document bore official council seals and authentication codes. Years of carefully planned atrocities, laid out in bureaucratic detail. More gasps echoed from the galleries as species representatives realized the full scope of the conspiracy. The council hadn't just oppressed them. They had planned to exterminate most of them once their usefulness ended. Speaker Janali's form began pulsing with agitated colors. The powerful telepath reached out with its mind, attempting to dominate Hannah's thoughts and force her to stop this devastating presentation. Psychic energy crashed against the human's consciousness like a tidal wave. Instead of collapsing under the mental assault, Hannah remained perfectly calm. Beside her, Taiyang rose to his feet. The dog's cybernetic implants blazed with brilliant light as military-grade psionic shielding activated. The Mindari's attack scattered harmlessly against defenses that had been designed specifically to counter telepathic interference, Impossible. Speaker Janali shrieked, its colors shifting to panicked yellow. No species has ever developed effective psionic shielding. You never asked the right questions, Hannah replied. You assumed humans were primitive because we don't have natural telepathy. You never considered that we might develop technological solutions to biological problems. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from oppressed species began shouting accusations at their council overlords. Some demanded immediate answers, while others called for justice. The careful alliance that had held the galaxy under tyrannical rule for centuries began crumbling in real time. Chancellor Vextar's roar of fury echoed above the noise. Silence. This changes nothing. Even if these allegations were true, the Council's authority is absolute. Hannah smiled and pressed one final button on her briefcase. Actually, Chancellor, there's one more thing you should know about this presentation. A new hologram appeared. A communications array showing thousands of signal paths spreading across the galaxy like a spider web. Everything we've discussed here today has been broadcast live to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Every species, every government, every individual with access to galactic communications has seen the evidence. The truth is already spreading faster than you can contain it. The color drained from every council member's face as they realized the magnitude of what had just happened. Their darkest secrets weren't just exposed to the chamber, they had been revealed to the entire galaxy simultaneously. In the galleries above, alien spectators were already receiving emergency communications from their homeworlds. Revolutions had begun. The Grand Chamber of Nexus Station had become a battlefield without weapons. Alien representatives screamed at each other in dozens of languages, while their translators struggled to keep up. Some species delegates were backing away from their council overlords, while others demanded immediate explanations for the evidence they had just witnessed. Admiral Kim Hannah stood calmly in the center of the chaos, her hand resting on her briefcase as more hidden systems came online. What everyone had assumed was a simple holographic projector was revealing its true nature. Antenna arrays extended from hidden compartments, quantum processors hummed to life, and communication systems that shouldn't have existed began broadcasting across the galaxy. Chancellor Vextar pushed through the crowd of arguing aliens, his 6 arms reaching for weapons that his guards had confiscated before the trial. His compound eyes focused on Hannah with murderous intent. "You're not just some military officer," he snarled, his mandibles dripping with acidic rage. "No simple admiral could have gathered this information. What are you really?" Hannah smiled the same calm smile she had worn since arriving at the station. Around her, the noise of the chamber faded as everyone waited for her answer. Even the rioting aliens in the galleries above fell silent to hear what she would say. "My name is Director Kim Hannah," she announced clearly. "I am the head of Humanities, Shadow Intelligence Division. For the past 15 years, I have been building something you never saw coming." The words hit the council members like physical blows. Several of them stumbled backward, finally understanding the magnitude of the trap they had walked into. They had invited their own destruction aboard their most secure station. "Impossible," whispered Speaker Janali, its translucent form flickering with fear. "Our telepaths would have detected any large-scale intelligence operation. We scan the minds of every being who enters Council space." "You scanned for military secrets and weapons," Hannah replied. "You never looked for something as simple as curiosity and compassion. While you built bigger armies, we built something much more dangerous. We built trust." She gestured to her briefcase, which was now displaying real-time communications from across the galaxy. Messages in hundreds of languages scrolled past as entire civilizations learned the truth about their rulers. Every being you oppressed, every species you conquered, every world you poisoned, they all had one thing in common. They wanted someone to care about their suffering, so we cared. We listened, we remembered, and most importantly, we helped. The revelation began to sink in for the council members. The Kralix representative, A massive creature, covered in chitinous armor, spoke in a voice like grinding metal. You turned our own agents against us. It accused our most trusted operatives. We're feeding you information. Not exactly, Hannah corrected. We never turned anyone against you. We simply offered them something you never did. Hope. Hope that someone was documenting their crimes. Hope that someone would eventually hold them accountable. Hope that their suffering meant something. Through the massive viewing windows of the chamber, the results of 15 years of careful planning were becoming visible. Explosions of light marked rebel attacks on government facilities. Entire star systems were going dark as local populations seized control of communication networks. The galaxy was waking up from centuries of oppression. Chancellor Vextar's rage finally exploded. He lunged toward Hannah with all 6 arms extended, intending to tear her apart with his bare claws. Instead, he found himself facing Taiyang, who had moved between them with inhuman speed. The dog's cybernetic implants blazed with energy as advanced defensive systems activated. What everyone had assumed was a simple pet revealed itself as a sophisticated guardian unit. Vextar's attack was deflected by an energy field that sent him flying across the chamber. The beauty of being classified as unarmed, Hannah observed, as Taiyang returned to her side, is that nobody thinks to look for unconventional weapons. Information, compassion, hope, these things can topple empires more effectively than any plasma cannon. Emergency alerts were flooding into the chamber, as council members received desperate communications from their homeworlds. The Vorthok Chancellor's communication device was screaming with reports of slave revolts across 17 systems. Speaker Janali's form was flickering rapidly as it processed telepathic distress calls from Mindari. Facilities under attack. Status. Report from the Kepler sector, announced one terrified aide. All mining operations have been seized by former slaves. They're demanding immediate trials for war crimes. The Proxima Station mental conditioning facility has been destroyed, reported another. The freed subjects are broadcasting evidence of Mindari experiments across subspace. Each report brought news of another victory for the oppressed, and another disaster for their oppressors. Governments were falling, populations were rising, and the careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy under control was collapsing in real time. Hannah watched the chaos with satisfaction. This was what victory looked like when achieved through intelligence rather than violence. No human ships had fired a shot. No human soldiers had died in battle. Yet humanity had just won the most decisive victory in galactic history. You want to know the real irony? She asked the stunned council members. You could have prevented all of this by simply being decent to the beings under your rule. If you hadn't committed atrocities, we would have had no evidence to gather. If you hadn't oppressed entire species, they never would have trusted us with their secrets. She closed her briefcase, its mission finally complete. Around her, the Galactic Council was dying, not from external attack, but from the weight of its own crimes finally being exposed to the light. The trial is over, Hannah announced, and the verdict is clear. You are all guilty, as charged. The galaxy had spoken, and it had chosen freedom. 6 months had passed since the day that changed everything. Admiral Kim Hannah walked through the corridors of what used to be called Nexus Station, but the place felt completely different now. Gone were the Vorthok guards with their threatening, chittering voices. Gone were the fearful whispers of oppressed species representatives. Instead, the halls buzzed with excited conversations in dozens of languages as beings from across the galaxy worked together as equals. The Grand Chamber, where Hannah had once stood trial, now served as the free assembly hall, where 12 tyrants had once sat in judgment. Comfortable seating now accommodated representatives from over 40 different civilizations. The intimidating platforms had been replaced with a circular arrangement where everyone could see and speak to each other as equals. Hannah stood at one of the great windows, watching ships arrive for the monthly assembly meeting. Sleek exploration, vessels from the reformed Mindari worlds, docked beside colorful trade ships from the liberated Zephyrian colonies. Research stations and diplomatic transports filled the docking bays. But she noticed something important. Not a single warship was visible anywhere. Director Kim called a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Representative Yoon Minho approaching with a data pad in his hands. The young man served as humanity's elected delegate to the Confederation, chosen by democratic vote rather than appointment by military leaders. The Andralis system has sent another request for membership, he reported with a smile. They specifically asked to meet with the humans who conquered an empire using nothing but a briefcase. Taiyang lifted his head from where he had been resting, near Hannah's feet. The dog had become famous across the galaxy as the guardian beast who protected truth from lies. Children from dozens of species sent him toys and treats, while their parents told stories of how he had helped defeat the evil council. Hannah scratched behind Taiyang's ears, feeling the warm metal of his cybernetic implants. Tell them we would be honored to welcome them to the Confederation, but make sure they understand something important. We never conquered anything. We simply revealed what was already there. She gestured toward a display case visible through the hall's glass walls. Inside sat her old briefcase, now a museum piece with a simple label that read the weapon that changed everything. Thousands of beings visited it every day, trying to understand how such an ordinary object had brought down the most powerful empire in galactic history. How are the war crimes trials proceeding? Hannah asked as they walked toward the assembly hall. Former Chancellor Vexstar was sentenced to life imprisonment yesterday, Minho reported. The Vorthok people voted to dissolve their empire completely. They're forming individual planet governments and asking for help to rebuild their society. Without slavery. Hannah nodded approvingly. The Vorthok had surprised everyone by embracing change more completely than anyone expected. Once their people learned about the atrocities committed in their name, they had demanded immediate reform. Their new leaders were former slaves who understood the value of freedom. What about the Mindari Collective? She asked. Complete transformation, Minho replied with obvious admiration. They've turned their telepathic abilities toward healing trauma victims and helping different species understand each other better. Speaker Janali personally requested to serve as a counselor for beings who suffered under council rule. Through the assembly hall's viewing galleries, Hannah could see representatives from dozens of species working together on various projects. Former enemies were now collaborating on trade agreements, scientific research, and cultural exchanges. The Kraliks were using their industrial expertise to help rebuild worlds they had once strip-mined. The Etherian were sharing their advanced medical knowledge freely with species they had once experimented upon. Her communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sound made her smile because it represented something that would have been impossible under council rule. Open communication between all members of the galactic community. Director Hannah, came a translated voice. This is Captain Chen Ari, of the exploration vessel Harmony. We've made contact with 3 previously unknown species in the Outer Rim. They've heard stories about the liberation and specifically requested to meet with humanity. What did they say, exactly? Hannah asked, curious about how their story was spreading to unexplored regions. They asked to meet the peaceful warriors who fought with truth instead of weapons. They want to learn how to protect themselves from tyranny without becoming tyrants themselves. Hannah felt a warm sense of satisfaction. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen when she first stepped aboard that transport 6 months ago. The galaxy was learning that strength didn't have to come from violence, and that the most powerful weapon was the willingness to expose lies to the light of truth. Tell them we'll be happy to meet with them, she replied. Schedule a diplomatic mission for next week. She looked around the bustling assembly hall one more time, watching beings who had once lived in fear now working together toward a better future. Former slaves were serving as ambassadors. Reformed tyrants were teaching others about the dangers of absolute power. Children from different species were playing together in the station's gardens. Come on, Taiyang, she said, gathering. her materials. We have new friends to meet, and they want to hear about how truth defeated an empire. As they walked toward the docking bay where humanity's diplomatic vessel waited, Hannah reflected on the lesson the galaxy had learned. Sometimes the most dangerous person in any room wasn't the one with the biggest gun or the strongest army. Sometimes it was the one brave enough to speak the truth. No matter how powerful the lies opposing it might be, the universe was a much brighter place when people chose to shine light into dark corners instead of adding to the darkness.